Hello. So in this lecture, we're going to talk about Activerecord basics, just to kind of get your feet wet on how to interact with your database, and some basic validations. So Rails can validate your data before it actually inserts it or updates it in the database. I'm going to provide some links as well for your own research. I'll be putting these in the lecture notes, but there's some Activerecord documentation guides as well as validation guides that are actually very helpful. So I'll post those. A couple things first, Rails conventions, database tables. You'll notice they're plural with underscores. So for example, book clubs. So it's lowercase, so that's snake case, but it's pluralized. And then the actual active record model is singular and camel case. So this book club model is represented in the database with a table called book clubs. So it's kind of a little thing to be aware of. Let me show you that real quick. So for example, in Rails, it provides a DB console, which gives you access to interacting with your database. But there's also Rails console, which is actually where you run Ruby commands to interact with Activerecord, which interacts with your database. So Rails DB console is where you can execute SQL commands, and Rails console is where you execute Ruby Activerecord commands. And I wanted to show you that. So first, I was going to remind you that if I go to our models here and go to device, our model name is device. And so that's the uppercase name, camel case name that Rails uses. But in the database, right, in the database, that's going to be devices, so lowercase, snake case, pluralized. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about database table and model class. All right. So let's take a quick look at this DB console. Rails. I'm in my application, this devices app that I created last time. So if I run Rails DB console, this actually puts me into the database console for the database. And so I can look and I can run commands, select all from devices, and there's all my devices. I could select all from devices where company equals Apple. Oops. I can typo stuff too. There. So, I can use SQL and interact with that here, that's fine. But I think what's important is that we need to get familiar with Activerecord. And so, so we just got done, being in DB console. If you need to exit will get you out. But if I want to interact with the same, database using Rails, then I'll show you how to do that. So I'm in my application directory, and I can do console. And so now I'm in my Rails console. So I can do regular Ruby stuff, right? 1 + 1, hello world. I can do Ruby stuff here, but I also have a pathway into my database as well. So in order to interact with, if I want to reproduce the same things I've done over here, so select all from devices. Well, if I want to do that in Activerecord, I use my model name, and then I do all, device.all. And so it'll return back this collection of Activerecord models. It also shows you the SQL that it was generated. So select devices.star from devices. Isn't that cool? So it's a good way, kind of a teaching tool as well. What else did we do? Select all from devices where company is Apple. So I can do device dot and then do a where, company, and then just give it a hash with the key. The key is the field in the database, and then the string is the value that you're looking for. And that returns the Apple record. So notice how quickly and how powerful that language, Activerecord language is in order to interact with your database. So very, very cool. I think the next thing I want to do is, that's kind of a good intro to that. And these are the types of commands. Check this out. This device.all. I'm going to go into our code and go to the controller, devices controller, and look at the line they call devices. They're assigning to a variable device.all, and that's the command that's used to get all the records. And then in your index view, it actually iterates over the devices and prints out the companies. And that's how you get this view right here. Isn't that cool? So let's go ahead and from here, let's create a new device. So we'll do company, and I think I deleted Samsung, so I'll add them back. And Galaxy. So I'm going to create a device. If I did that right. Oops, I need a name. Cool. So again, it shows you insert devices, company name. Actually shows you all of that. And if I go back to my page and hit refresh, you'll see it's there. If I go back, again, just to show you, we're all looking at the same database. I'll jump over to the SQL terminal, do a select all, and you'll see there's Samsung. So we're looking at the same database just from 3 different perspectives. Now I'm only showing you the database console to show you that we're interacting with a SQL database, but to be honest with you, we're really not going to use it. So I'm going to close this tab and go back to the Rails console, which you'll use all the time. So let me go back here, do another new device. Man, what was Microsoft's phone called? Oh, I don't even remember what it was called. I don't know. I'll just call it phone. Create that device. So create it, successful. It's on there. I can go back to the terminal, to the console, and do device.all, and you'll see that it's in there. Cool. So again, just showing you interacting with your database is actually pretty straightforward, pretty cool. This CRUD app is a good start. Rails console is something you'll have to get familiar with. And so the next thing I want to look at is, notice if I create a new device and I just hit create without filling in the data. Device was created successfully. That's kind of a bad thing with the scaffolded app. I can create invalid data, so that's not cool. Not cool at all. So I'm actually going to destroy that. And oh man, yeah. So notice if I pull that up, create a device with an empty company and an empty name. So that's not good. So we're going to want to incorporate validations into this. So I'm going to destroy this record. And we don't want to create devices with invalid data. So let me show you a few things in the Rails console again. That if I have a device.new, let's see, we have some methods that we can call to check for validity. So for example, I can check if it's valid. Well, it's true. It is valid because we don't have any validations on that model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into, let's Let's see our code. And I'm going to add a validation in here. So I'm going to validate company and name, and I want to make sure that they're at least there. Okay, there's lots of other cool validations we can do. A lot of, not only presence but also what's in the string. When we start introducing numbers, we can validate things are numbers. We can create a bunch of cool custom validations, but this is a built-in one where we can validate to make sure at least company name are there. So that'll be a good start. So let's go back to our console. I'm going to reload. Reload will basically take the changes in your code, reload them in the console so that we can get those. Okay, so that's a command I'll actually add here. Reload will load code changes into the console. So that's actually very important. All right, so what I'm going to do is create another device. I'm not going to create it. I'm just going to create an object in memory, but not save it to the database, and check for validity. This time, notice it says false. Ah, okay, it's false. Well, what makes it not valid? Well, we can check for error messages. And notice errors.messages says company can't be blank, name can't be blank. Ooh, cool. What else? What else can we look at? We can look at the errors hash and get down to the specific type of error for that field. I think you can do, let's see, errors. Get to a specific, error. What is the error for that specific field by going into the details hash? So there's, all sorts of ways to get at the error messages of a particular object in memory. So the next thing I want to do then is actually update this record so that we can actually save it. So I'm going to assign, I'm gonna update it, the name, and we will, let's see, no, that's company. Let's see, what are my pixel? I'll just put pixel 3. All right, so I'm going to update that record now and save it to the database. And check that it's valid. And it's valid now because I've actually put in those values in there. Cool. So now that we've kind of got an idea of, checking validity, adding a validation here, and let's go back to our app, and notice Pixel 3 showed up because I inserted that. Let's try to add a new device without inputting any values here now. And notice Rails has this built into the scaffold. Oh, looks like company can't be blank and name can't be blank. Notice how that matches here when you get the error messages off of that object. Company can't be blank, name can't be blank. Those are the exact same messages, but they're formatted over here to show, and then the form doesn't, you can't save. So let's do a company with no name. And again, it updates, name can't be blank. And then finally, there's the SE, iPhone SE. And now I should be able to create this device. Yep. And there it is. So there, in a nutshell, is some active record basics. We were able to create a record, update a record, check for validity. Add some active record commands to validate our data so that we just don't get dummy data. And we are able to extract error messages out. So this is just the start. We will continue and build on this knowledge, interacting with our database. And furthermore, I think it's also important to interact with our web pages as well, our views, like how do they display those error messages? How do we set up these forms so that they can validate our data, display error messages, and so forth. So we want to get into some of that too. So that'll be definitely coming up next. We also want to be able to add more fields to devices because they're more than just company and name. You might have other specifications, form type, etc. So we want to be able to add more fields to a device record as well. So that will be coming up next. Talk to you next time.